Hey everyone, I'm Rizeki, and welcome to a little bit of a different kind of video. This is completely unscripted, but I felt like I had to make it since we are currently in the middle of the subclass State of mini-series. So, for those of you who don't know or were wondering where the Stasis video was, I actually put one out a couple months ago on my YouTube. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out before watching the rest of this video. The reason I didn't put out a new State of Stasis video is because everything that I said in that video 4 months ago still applies today. So if you want to go see what the current State of Stasis is, go check out that video. It's really good. But what I wanted to do today is kind of go through the changes that Bungie announced this past week to Stasis and talk about why it fixes a lot of problems Stasis had and how Stasis is going to look in the final shape. So this is kind of like an addendum to that State of video. But the synopsis of what I said in that video kind of boils down to Stasis being, it's missing a couple key components. The biggest issues on Stasis is no sustain, or just not really good sustain, and also a lack of killing power. Lack of killing power. Stasis is really good at CC, right? CC, you have slow and freeze, but you could CC huge groups of enemies, but it doesn't matter if you can't kill them, right? And also staying alive is probably even more important, where in endgame you're taking so much damage and you have such inconsistent sources of damage resist that you just weren't staying alive easily. So even if you did have the killing power, you weren't able to stay alive to make it matter. If we look at subclasses like Solar, right, and I just put out the big State of Solar video. Solar has a bit of everything, right? They have good healing, they have good damage, and it's AoE damage at that, so you could just kill tons of enemies. The best form of CC is, of course, Death, and Solar just does that better, right? Even if we look at a subclass that has more CC in it, like Strand, right? And Strand is, just came out a year ago, and it's strong. I think everyone would agree Strand is pretty strong. We have tools like Woven Mail and Woven Mail. So you get that free 35% DR. Maybe it's 40%, whatever. Well, we'll just say it's 35 because I can't remember. And you also get things like Suspend, and Suspend is, of course, AoE, right? So we get that CC, but we also have more sustain, and we also have more killing power. We have things like Unravel, and we have grapple melees. We have ways, and Threadlings, of course, right? We have ways. Oh gosh, handwriting's terrible. We have ways to pick up those kills while staying alive on Strand. Stasis is missing a lot of those key things, right? We have great CC, but we don't have the sustain or killing power. And that's really what Bungie is addressing with these changes going into the final shape. So let's quickly go over the article and see exactly what these changes are and why they are fixing Stasis. Also, this is kind of a side note. This is the second time I'm recording this video. The first time I forgot to record my microphone. So, great YouTuber. Good job, Rizeki. You're so good at this. Anyway, starting off, the biggest thing that we're getting with the update to Stasis is the new Frost Armor keyword. So, Frost Armor is the replacement to pretty much every single source of Stasis Overshield in the game. So, you'll see as we go through this that pretty much everything that gave you an Overshield no longer does that, and instead will give you Frost Armor stacks or some Stasis Shards or something like that. So again, I kind of already said it, but Frost Armor is different from something like Woven Mail, where Woven Mail, you get it, it lasts for like 10 seconds, and it gives you 35 to 40% DR, sorry. And that's it. Frost Armor is different. Frost Armor will be stackable. By default, you get 5 stacks of Frost Armor, maximum that lasts 9 seconds. And with the Whisper of Rhyme Fragment, which has been changed, Frost Armor now lasts 13 seconds, and you can get a max of 8 stacks. So without Whisper of Rhyme, the maximum amount of damage resist you could get from Frost Armor is about 22.5%. And with Rime, you're going to have about 35 to 36%, which is way better and is pretty much on par with Woven Mail. I think the big difference between Frost Armor and Woven Mail, besides the stacking aspect, is Frost Armor is going to be easier to keep up for a longer period of time. Woven Mail, yeah, you could refresh it, but there's a lot less sources of Woven Mail, or a lot. The changes that are made to Stasis Shards are going to keep your Frost Armor up way more often than you would be able to keep up with Woven Mail, unless you're like spitting out tons of orbs with Thread of Warding on Strand. But anyway, Frost Armor will gain a stack every time you pick up a Stasis Shard. So a theme that you'll see in all of these updates and reworks is the amount of Stasis Shards that are able to be generated is way higher. So as long as you know how to create shards, you're going to be able to keep up max stacks on Frost Armor way more often than something like Woven Mail or the current system in Stasis, which is something like, you know, Whisper of Chains, where standing next to a frozen target or crystal will give you a huge amount of DR. I think some people might see, you know, the DR changes as a nerf to Stasis, because I think, you know, I saw some people saying that you could get up to like 70% DR with Stasis, and it's stacking, you know, DR sources. And now you only get a max of like 35%. But the difference is, with that 70% currently, it's very inconsistent, right? Whisper of Chains, you know, if someone killed a target that you were standing next to activate it, well, there goes your DR instantly. And it was a lot harder to keep up that 70%. Whereas now, as long as you're collecting shards, you're able to keep up that DR way longer. So even though it's less, you're having it for a longer period of time, which is way more beneficial. If you have 70% DR only 10% of the time, you're going to average like 7% damage resist over the course of an entire activity, whereas 35%, 100% of the time means you have it the whole time, which is way better. And that's why Woven Mail is so good. Let's see. I already said overshields are gone. The other great change they're making is the Tectonic Rim and Glacial Harvest aspects, when equipped, not only do what they did before, but also add the benefit of collecting a Stasis Shard grants health and a stack of Frost Armor. So you're getting that instant benefit of a little bit extra health when you pick up a shard, and you're also gaining a stack of Frost Armor, so you're getting an extra 4.5% damage resist on top of that healing. And obviously, Frost Armor lingers for a bit, so this is just a really nice change. Definitely helping to keep you alive. Stasis Shards before only gave you like melee energy, so they were pretty useless. And I said it in the Stasis video, but shards really lost a lot of their functionality when elemental well mods were removed from the game. So, you know, giving them a little bit more purpose is really, really good. And this is, you know, sustain is a pretty good purpose to have. And I think most people took one of the harvest aspects anyway, so, you know, this is just a free buff to your aspect. Let's see. There's also small, medium, and large Stasis Shards now, and they each grant a different amount of health and armor stacks. So there's that. Tectonic Harvest will also now create a Stasis Shard when shattering a frozen target, in addition to Stasis Crystals. So, you know, as long as you're shattering something, you're getting a shard out of it, and you're going to be able to keep up your Frost Armor a lot more consistently that way. There's also 2 exotic changes for Renewal Grasps and Ballador's Wraith Weavers. Renewals have always kind of seen use. They were kind of like the go-to hunter stasis exotic. You either ran this or Frosties. I tended to run Frosties because you get more grenades. So I thought it was a little bit better. But this might actually be more compelling now. Currently, Renewal Grasps will grant you and allies 25% damage resist for just walking into the Dusk Field. And this is being replaced with frost armor stack gaining over time. What is being unchanged, I'm pretty sure, is enemies dealing decreased damage. So that's the same. You get an instant benefit for enemies, you know, that walk inside the dusk field. But removing this instant 25% might seem like a nerf at first. But what I think is actually happening here is it's acting as a timer reset instead of a source of frost armor. So sure, if you need frost armor, you could throw down your dusk field, walk in it, and sit there for a while. But I think with the amount of shards that you're generating, by the time you're going into a renewal grasp dusk field, you already probably have at least a couple stacks of frost armor. So what this is really doing is increasing the consistency of you keeping up that damage resist, which I think is going to be better, especially because you can max out at 35% DR. So sitting in a renewal grasp, extending your 35% timer is pretty huge. And I think honestly, overall, a buff to the exotic, even if it looks a little weird right now. Next, Baladors is a pretty, I can't highlight it, is a pretty unused exotic currently. You know, I had a friend who tried using it in PvP. It's actually not that bad. But what's happening is we're removing the Stasis Overshield and instead replacing it with Frost Armor when you activate your Rift. So, you know, the Overshield was it was nice, but kind of useless, right? It's just extra HP, basically. What the Frost Armor is doing instead is, well, you get Frost Armor and you get DR. And it's probably going to act similar to Renewal, where it's resetting your timer. So it's just a way to keep more consistent Frost Armor on. I would kind of liken this to something like Surturachne's Facade, where Surturachne's on Hunter, when you use your grapple melee on Strand, or not your melee, your grapple on Strand, you gain Woven Mail. This is kind of the same. It's tying Frost Armor to your class ability, so you could gain Frost Armor on a cooldown. So Surturachne's gets used. I'm assuming because of that, Baladors is also probably going to see a little bit more use. And I'm pretty sure that it's also going to apply this to your teammates and not just yourself. So it might actually be way better than Surturachne's Facade. But we'll have to see. Overall, I think this is a really good buff. And it's going to be exciting to see Warlock players giving this a shot. And seeing how it performs in endgame. Okay, now on to the fragments. A lot of the fragment changes have to do with, you know, obviously Frost Armor, and more importantly, sources of Stasis Shard generation. You know, currently it's a little difficult to get a lot of shards. So what these fragments are doing is increasing the consistency of generating them. Starting off is the most obvious one for consistency, Whisper of Chill, brand new fragment, by the way. Stasis Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create a Stasis Shard, so just killing stuff with a Stasis Weapon will get you shards over time. Simple, clean, I can see it being used. I don't know if it's going to be better than some other options, but we'll see. What's really interesting is Whisper of Chains, which I mentioned earlier, gave us DR when standing next to frozen targets. That's gone now. Completely nuked, gone. It's replaced with something similar to Whisper of Chill, where you get a chance to generate a Stasis Shard when defeating a target while you have Frost Armor. So as long as you have a stack on you, killing enemies, and it doesn't have to be with a Stasis Weapon, it could be with any weapon, it could be with Shatter damage, whatever. As long as you have Frost Armor, you have a chance to create a shard. Combined with Chill, you probably have a pretty high chance of getting a shard on any kill. Outside of something like an internal cooldown, which I'm sure both of them have. So Chains, it's functionally doing what it did before, just in a roundabout way, because a shard is going to give you Frost Armor. So you're getting that DR just in a different way. Whisper of Fractures, it's going to just give you Frost Armor for defeating a frozen target with melee. This is pretty good on Hunters. If you run the Dance Machines melee Jerkin build, right, you're gonna get frost armor for just killing enemies. Titans are probably gonna make a lot of use of this as well. And you don't have to pick up a shard for this, you just get frost armor. It's free. And no one really used it originally anyway, so having it completely reworked is cool with me. Whisper of Torment hasn't changed too much. It just gets a nice buff when you have frost armor. So I think, you know, a big thing with the frost armor and shard changes is we're making the stasis kit a little bit more cohesive around the keywords in the kit. So instead of, you know, having these fragments that did things but felt a little like disconnected from each other, you know, felt like they maybe fit, but, you know, they didn't work well together. Now they're tying everything together. So frost armor is the core of stasis now, and as such, Whisper of Torment gets a buff when you have frost armor. So I think this is actually going to be a little bit more used, because having 12% grenade energy regen is going to be pretty good. I guess it depends on how much damage you're taking, but I can see this actually being used a little bit more going forward, especially on like a Duskfield build. And last but not least, we have the final new fragment, Whisper of Reversal. So while you have frost armor, dealing or receiving physical damage, not melee or projectile melees will damage and slow your victim or attacker. I think this is really a Titan fragment, and maybe like a niche PvP fragment. I don't see it being as useful in PvE, where you have other more potent sources of slow. You know, hunters have Winter's Shroud, you know, Duskfield, whatever. There's more easily accessible sources in PvE that aren't reliant on you dealing damage. But if you're up close and personal, like a Behemoth Titan, this is going to be a lot better. So I think for some builds, this is going to be good. For others, it's going to be like a meh, it exists. Probably better to take something else. So that's all of that was just fixing the sustain problem, basically, which is kind of nuts. But now we have the killing power problem. And Stasis has a single keyword in its kit that affects damage, and that's Shatter. Shatter was already like decent in PvE for low difficulty content. But you know, in higher difficulties, the Shatter damage didn't do much. You didn't have that killing power that you needed to destroy an entire room. But Stasis Shatter got a 100% damage increase. So that's pretty big. It's going to be doing a lot more going forward. And if you're using a Shatter build, you're probably going to be eating pretty good. I really like this because, you know, I run Shatter Dive on Hunter to skate, and it's nice to have a little bit more usefulness in shatter damage. So I could run a build with Shatter Dive a little bit more easily going into the final shape. But that's all of the changes. Wow, this video is long. It's like 20 minutes long. I meant this to be 5 minutes. But anyway, I think really the things that Bungie is doing here is to bring Stasis up to par with subclasses like Solar and Strand, where they have that damage capability and the sustain to go with them. You know, Stasis is going to be a lot more competitive in endgame now that you have the ability to stay alive a little bit more. You have a little bit more killing power. And I think what's maybe more interesting is they're kind of transitioning Stasis into a more active play style. So if you want to keep up your woven mail, your frost armor, you have to understand how to generate shards. You have to go collect those shards, and you have to play a lot more active to keep the benefits of frost armor alive on you. And with things like, you know, Whisper of Torment, now gaining a benefit when you have frost armor, you know, you want frost armor as much as you can, because it's the core of stasis. It's keeping you alive, it's giving you extra benefits, and, you know, ultimately, you know, the whole subclass revolves around having it. So, you know, generate shards, keep it up, and it's going to benefit you quite a bit. I think stasis is going to be pretty good going into the final shape, and I'll definitely be giving it a try. And of course, a lot of these changes are also going to benefit prismatic, and there's a lot of things there to unpack. You know, woven mail plus frost armor might break a couple things. We'll see. That's a lot of DR. But again, yeah, sorry for turning this into a 20-minute video. Didn't mean to do that. If you like this kind of off the cusp, you know, me talking to a camera type of video, I could do more of them. And of course, if you haven't seen the original Stasis video, definitely check that out when you get a chance. Everything pretty much holds up, and, you know, it gives you an idea of why a lot of these changes that Bungie just announced are improving the subclass. But with all that said, I think the only thing to say is the final video in the subclass State of series is coming out Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, as usual. So definitely stick around for that. There is a lot of theory crafting, a lot of like predictive stuff in that video, which I think is going to be really cool. And I can't wait to see what people think about it. But yeah, that's all I got. Let me know your thoughts on these stasis changes in the comments down below or over in my Discord server. All the links are in the description. And of course, if you like the video and want to see more, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and like the video. There's a lot more like this coming out soon, especially with the final shape coming up in 9 days now. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I've been Rizeki, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.